We've been told that unemployment is going to reach a 5-year high. Growth is at pretty much zero. Michael Simmons has written a piece in the Spectator and says Rachel Reeves has only ugly choices, which I think is about right. Michael, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's a pretty bad time to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, I guess you might say. There doesn't appear to be any way out for her, does there? There's nothing that she can do which is going to be good news for anyone.
Yeah, well, look, this is the problem, because the only solution to the economic and fiscal crisis that we find ourselves in, which, to reiterate, is just the simple fact that we spend far too much, is to cut the size of the state. But we saw with the winter fuel, we saw with the benefits reductions, that Labour MPs are just not going to tolerate that, which means the Chancellor's only other option, because she can't just ignore this whole, her only option is to raise taxes. But raising taxes just, dampens the economy. She wants to target specific groups. If she targets pensioners, then pensioners are up in arms. If she targets business are up in arms. So she really has no, there's no easy win for her coming into this budget.
No, there really isn't. And the worrying thing for an awful lot of people who've got brains is that she seems to be increasingly taking recommendations from the Resolution Foundation and or people that have worked there at one time or another, like Torsten Bell.
Yeah, well, I think the Resolution Foundation, which is obviously a left-wing think tank, it's really, pains me to say, but it's really worth looking at their output right now because of that fact that Torsten Bell has been tasked with finding her these revenue raisers. He's been tasked with going, we don't want to look at income tax, allegedly. We don't want to look at VAT. So where can I find the 20, 30 billion that the Chancellor has tasked me with finding? So when the Resolution Foundation puts out a suggestion, like the one they have this week, that we should put income tax up and national insurance down to shift the burden away from workers and on to pensioners, it means it's a suggestion that might be quite likely, because presumably he's in line with his former organisation.
Well, that's right. And the other problem is when they say, look, we can't really cut anything in the public sector, we can't really find any savings there, they're being slightly disingenuous. I mean, we've found over just in the last couple of days incredible amounts of money being spent, not just on migrant hotels, but, for example, on things like taxis for migrants. Millions and millions of pounds being racked up by individual taxi companies, which presumably people like Serco and other kind of private contractors are putting into the main bill that they charge the government. Serco and various other, I think Clean Springs is another company that are housing migrants. They're charging billions and billions of pounds to the government on an annual basis. Surely to heavens, there must be some savings that can be got there.
Well, but this is the problem, right? Because as you highlight, there are tons and tons and millions of government wastage, on these taxis, on things that get spent on the government credit cards. But the problem is, even if you got rid of all of that, which you should do, there's a moral argument for the state should not be wasting any of our money. Yeah. Even if you got rid of all of that, you still wouldn't fill the hole. And the only way you're going to get Britain's sort of books balancing is if you look at the welfare state. We're about to be spending £100 billion on benefits for sickness, but we also spend hundreds of billion pounds on things like the state pension. And I think, unfortunately, that whichever Chancellor is unlucky enough to be living in number 11 when the bond market finally, goes kaput, is going to have to seriously slash one of those two things.
Yes. And, I mean, do you see the bond market going kaput at some point in reality in the near term?
Well, this is the thing that's really hard to predict. I mean, if you look at the longer dated gilts, those 30-year ones, those have been surging in the last few months, and that suggests that markets think that it's not immediate that the crisis is going to come. So this is not going to be this is not going to have to happen at this budget, but in the next few years, it's looking to me increasingly inevitable. But if you were able to predict, at which budget or at which year the crisis is going to come, I think you could probably make yourself quite rich.
Yes, that would be nice, but unfortunately, if we did make ourselves quite rich, she'd probably tax you up the wazoo and get at least half of it to keep. And as far as recommendations from sort of larger bodies, I mean, I see there's another one this morning, this one from the Institute of Directors, kind of saying that Rachel Reeves must increase income tax. I mean, why do these organisations like the CBI, like the Institute of Directors and various other, even I think the Institute of Small Business and all of that, why do they keep urging her to put taxes up? Because people don't want that.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The argument goes that if you are, as I outlined, she's not able to cut spending really because her backbenchers just will not allow it.
Yeah.
So then, if you are going to put up taxes, the argument is that it's better to put up taxes across a broad base, and if you do it on income tax, you do it on everyone rather than going for these niche taxes that just hit employers or just hit pensioners or whatever. That's the argument anyway, and it does raise a lot more money. I think politically as well, there might even be some sense in it. Obviously, she'd be in personal trouble because she's promised multiple times that she's not going to do that. But if Labour were to do it now, there's a small world where the economy gets a bit back on track just because the fiscal hole is less of a problem. They take a hit for it now because, as you say, no one wants their taxes to be put up. But in a couple of years' time, they're in a slightly better position and they're allowed to start, spending money again. But I think that's just if you were looking for a positive spin on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very, very tricky. Nasty few months coming up. Michael, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Michael Simmons there, economics editor at The Spectator. Just on the subject of the migrant from Afghanistan who suddenly seemed to find that it wasn't too dangerous to go home for a bit of a holiday for 8 weeks in 2024, despite the fact that he gained asylum in this country by saying he couldn't go back to Afghanistan because the Taliban would kill him. Dave says this, morning Mike, with reference to this migrant who jetted back to Afghanistan, how did he get through passport control when his passport is probably at the bottom of the channel? Dave's in Hull. Susan from Essex says, Mike, loving the show. Sorry about your car. How does this Afghan afford to go on holiday back to Afghanistan? Are we paying for that too? Keep up the great work. And Pete in Nottinghamshire, I just wanted to know where this Afghan migrant got his new passport to travel to Afghanistan from. Yeah, I mean, has he got a British passport? Is he using an Afghan passport? How is he going back to a place where he says they want to kill him without being killed? Incredible. Keith in Hertford says this, how did the Afghan Taliban migrant afford the holiday for 8 weeks? I'm a 66-year-old holding down 2 part-time jobs, had to really think about how to afford to take my grandson to Leeds University from Hertford. Well, these people seem to have loads of money. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Absolutely bleeding ridiculous. Coming up, we're going to speak to Paul Harris from the Jewish Telegraph and asking him about Home Office challenging a ruling allowing Palestine Action to appeal the ban on their existence. This is talk. A quick voice note from Paul.
Hello, Mike. It's Paul from Broadway here. Just wanted to let you know about a friend of mine who has a fruit farm just on the Vale of Evesham, and he had to close his strawberry fields down because the certain communities coming out of Birmingham en masse with their families would literally fill their trousers up with the strawberries so that they could sell them in their shops in Birmingham. He had to shut his business down because of it.
That's amazing. So you'd have an ordinary business where you'd go, and again, in a sort of honour system, you go and pick strawberries, which is quite a nice thing to do. I used to do it when my kids were younger. You go and pick some strawberries, take them home, have some strawberries and cream, very nice. But unfortunately, you've got now these people coming in from Birmingham, as he says, literally just stealing loads and loads of strawberries, punnet by punnet by punnet, sticking them down their trousers and selling them without paying for them. What's going wrong with this country? I think we all know the answers to that, don't we?